Hello and welcome. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing cutting through the noise with debt and diet. Welcome to the Ultimate Crowdsource Personal Finance Show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, super excited to dive into this past week's episode with Dr. Scott Schur. In that particular episode, we were talking about health optimization so much here. We're also getting the opportunity to kind of continue our conversation that we had several weeks ago in episode 115R, where we started talking about how to get out of debt. I think the obvious continuation of that conversation is debt optimization, basically looking at the different types of debt that are out there and really some strategies that you should be aware of as you start looking to put together a comprehensive plan to handle that debt. Super excited about this, and to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. Yeah, what's going on in your world?
Well, probably the biggest thing is we are going to be moving, and I am announcing it for the first time on the show today, but we are going to be moving closer to you, man. We're going to be neighbors. Surprise!
Please not right next door.
That's what my wife said too. You can move out there closer to Brad, but if you guys are next door neighbors, it's too much Choose FI.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's fantastic. I know we are very excited to have you in the neighborhood because, yeah, where you live now is about 25 minutes from us.
The crazy thing is everything in Richmond's pretty close, except my house and your house.
Yeah, it's very odd. It's like this weird vortex, like the roads just do not line up. So yeah, I think we're 13 miles apart, but yeah, it takes 25, 30 minutes. So yeah, it's going to be great having you right around the corner.
Oh, we're excited about it. And I think just to our audience, like, practically speaking, we're excited about this for two reasons. One, because it makes it more sustainable. It means that my wife will have a better work-life home balance. Like right now, anytime we record, like right now we're recording, my wife took our 2-year-old and left the house to go find an activity. And she does this twice a week, and we have a second child on the way. She's getting a little frustrated with me. So we needed to find a space where we could just, run these side by side without really disrupting her life. And then the second half of this is that Brad and I have been wanting to do more video work together and do some more video podcast on the YouTube channel and companion video for a lot of the types of episodes that we're doing these days. And proximity is a big piece of that. So yeah, with all that in mind, I am really excited about what's coming, and we will be headed out your way in just the next couple weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, Danny is an absolute saint. I mean, she basically leaves the house for 4 hours a day, twice a week. And Zachy just does a great job. I mean, it's amazing. It's just unsustainable in the long run. So yeah, it's cool that we're going to have a space where we can actually record. I'm super excited. And yeah, not to mention community also, right? We talk about that all the time. And we have a real significant, I guess, Choose FI local presence up here, like kind of right where I live in the neighborhood. So hopefully we can get together for a lot more activities and just little things on a daily basis.
Think of all the activities we can do.
Well, actually, right, we have a board game at a board game night. Someone in our local group just set it up. I think it's going to be like a once a month or twice a month board game night, and it's at Wegmans, which now is going to be 4 minutes from your house as opposed to 30. Just those little things. It really is cool.
It is cool. That particular board game night, and for the month of May, I believe that's going to be on May 26th here in Richmond, and I would be there, except I think we're going to be navigating Camp 5 Mid-Atlantic that same period. But next month, guys, I'm there. I'm RSVPing ahead of time for the month of June. I will be there. All right, hey, let's go ahead and step back for a second and talk about this past week's episode. And there is so much here. I was so incredibly excited with how the episode came out, and for Dr. Scott for coming on the show and kind of walking us through this. And there were kind of two different aspects to the show, right, Brad? I mean, there was one, his backstory and what he is actually working on, which is hyperbaric oxygen treatments, totally outside my wheelhouse. I have no knowledge of this whatsoever. It was really fascinating to get him to kind of just talk me through that. I don't know exactly how I will apply that to my life directly, but to really see him be able to kind of highlight his view of medicine and functional medicine and what his goals are as he practices was really, really cool for him to share with us. But more importantly, honestly, selfishly, what I got out of this episode and what I hope most of our audience got out of this episode is cutting through the noise on health optimization.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what we talk about with financial independence and just life optimization in general. It's thinking a little bit differently. What we've thought about health and wellness as Americans for the last 30 years has gotten us to a pretty sorry state. I mean, you can literally see it every time you go out. I think many of us are waking up and saying, all right, this clearly isn't working. I need to figure it out for myself. And I think Scott referred to it as an N of one. You need to figure out what works for you. There's no blanket advice. This wasn't us saying, this is how you have to live. It's nothing like that. It's make small changes in your life that when done over many months and years, are going to add up to a better life. So, I mean, even, Jonathan, something as simple as the avocado oil, like Scott talked about that. And I know we went out and bought avocado oil literally the very next day. And that's what we've been using to cook with for the last, let's say, 2 months since we recorded with him. Can I point to being healthier from that in the last 2 months? No, obviously I can't. But if a doctor who has looked at this and has studied the research and said, okay, the smoke point on avocado oil is significantly higher and it makes for a long-term better health outcome, of course I'm going to make that change, right? Like that's simple. So if I can stack together 10, 20, 30 of those little things and end up with a longer health span, as Scott talked about, then that is a huge win for me.
You know, it's so funny, dude. I wasn't kidding. I double checked. I think it's actually a 1 gallon jug of olive oil because that was my oil. That's the good oil. Everybody knows that. I have $17.99 invested in this gallon of olive oil from Costco. And I thought about it for 2 days. I was very conflicted in my heart about it. And I decided, I decided to run them side by side. So I'm going to continue to use my olive oil until it's gone. And then after that, I will move forward with avocado oil only. But wait.
That's
I would love to get your thoughts on that. But I think the larger point was like, again, it's these aggregation of marginal gains. And I want to start with the oil and then work our way backwards. Like I do not allow vegetable oil in my house. We don't use it for anything. And I used to think like years and years ago that canola oil was the better version of vegetable oil. I don't use canola oil for anything in my house. And then it used to be like, all right, now olive oil, that's the safe place. That's the only thing I use. And now like increasingly, like I've kind of slowly narrowed that down and maybe I'll use it less and less. And now maybe it's avocado oil, but I didn't really understand the why of that. And he kind of really helped me piece that together. Essentially, like after you use it at these high points, after it starts to smoke, it starts to do the same toxic stuff in your body that the oil that you use for French fries does. That's a heart attack in a bottle.
Yeah, Jonathan, you're right. It definitely is about these little things, right? The aggregation of marginal gains. And to me, yeah, I mean, I look at things that I grew up with just seem kind of abhorrent to me now because we've learned more. It's not that my parents were trying to do anything terrible to us. That was the best information we had at the time, right? I mean, like I can think of margarine, us using margarine all the time instead of butter. I would never dream of giving my kids margarine now. Like you said, vegetable oil, soda. I mean, I used to drink soda by the gallon. I mean, like it was crazy how much soda I used to drink.
Shouldn't you be calling it pop? Aren't you one of those guys?
No, I'm definitely not a pop. That is not my part of the country. I know it's certainly
you guys in food stores. I don't know. I just thought I'd double check.
Yes, Long Island certainly does have an interesting vernacular. So you never know. You never know. But I mean, soda, or even just like these things that people believe are healthy, to the point of think about people using skim milk because fat is bad, or drinking diet soda because that's so much healthier. Eating whole grains and having that as the fundamental portion of your diet. For many decades, Americans believed those things were actually healthy. And I think a lot of the current research suggests they're not at all, right? So just do something different. It's not saying like you're a terrible person if you eat those, like nothing at all. It's like you genuinely believe you were doing right, but there's new information. I think that is another hallmark of financial independence and just this entire way of thinking is always being open to new information. I'm also intellectually honest enough to know what I believe today, it could be refuted 10 or 20 years from now, right? And I'll take that information in. I'll determine, does this make sense? If so, then obviously I'll change my mind and I'll change my behavior. it's just always being aware of what are these little changes I can make to be healthier. So like for me, I used to drink soda by the gallon or by the 2 liter quite often. Now I drink water, and I drink a ton of water. I mean, Jonathan, like it's insane. I probably drink 100 plus ounces of water a day easily. Well, Laura would probably laugh and say it's closer to 200, but that's what I drink now. I couldn't imagine opening up a bottle of Coke. That's just not part of my life anymore because I've changed it. I've changed that behavior.
Brad, you said, what I know might be wrong 20 years from now, but I don't think it will. I think if you're looking at life through the lens of simplicity, if that's your guiding light as opposed to a one size fits all fix it, like this, hey, this one pill will fix it. This one product will fix it. If you look at life through the lens of simplicity, you're never going to regret that. So like you said, 20 years from now, they refute it. If you're following Michael Pollan's basic guidelines, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, you're likely going to be good to go, right? And what's implicitly built into that is what Dr. Scott was saying, which is cut out the processed foods, cut out the sugar, cut out the stuff that your body doesn't know what to do with or has been so chemically altered in a lab that nature could never replicate it on its own. If you follow those general principles and you eat probably just a little bit less than the average, I guess, American in this case, you're going to do well over periods of time. Exercise, bring more exercise into your life. Make sure you're spending time outside. These are very basic principles that will ensure that you live a healthy outcome. And the other half I wanted to hit on was really, as we were talking about the healthcare system. And I think Dr. Scott used like sick care as a term that we have. And to some degree, this is true. But I think the larger point is we have some of the most amazing medicine in the world. We have amazing doctors. We have amazing nurses. We have the ability to bring you back from the edge of death. It's miracles that are done every single day by medical teams around the country and around the world. But we are horrible at preventative medicine. And I don't think that's really a systemic failure. I think instead it's a fundamental misunderstanding of responsibility. Doctors, nurses, medical teams, there's nothing that they can do that can replace a healthy lifestyle. You have to take personal responsibility. And so what we're trying to do here on this show, when in the few times that we go into this type of content is just cut through the noise, shorten the learning curve, and allow you to get information that will speed up and prevent you from going down rabbit holes that don't serve you and end up with you frustrated and burnout. And our education personally is evolving along the way. So as we try something new, we can bring that to you and just make you aware of it. And Brad, I have tried almost every diet that is out there. I am a diet addict, I guess you could say. So whether it be keto or intermittent fasting, whether it be paleo or high carb, low carb, like all these things, I have never tried the alcohol only diet that was referenced on the show. But basically, if there's a diet out there, I have likely tried it. And I have had success with all of them. So does that make one of them better or worse? I don't really know. But I can tell you, like when I was listening to Dr. Scott, what became immediately apparent is a common theme between all of those different approaches to dieting. And that is when you cut out processed food, when you control your blood sugar, when you eat regular healthy stuff over periods of time, your body will respond in an appropriate manner, especially when you pair that with a healthy lifestyle. And so kind of where I'm at now this year is something that is called If It Fits Your Macros. So IIFYM, best acronym ever. Almost as good as FWOTW, frugal one of the week. But If It Fits Your Macros basically gives you, it's a slightly more nuanced version of calorie counting, where it actually breaks down, instead of focusing on calories, it focuses down of actually grams of these nutrients that you need each day. What's amazing about that is once you know how many, carbs, how many protein, how many grams of carbs, how many grams of protein, how many grams of fat you need, your allocation of those becomes very freeing. So for the first time in my life, this past week, I put 10 grams of butter on top of my bowl of rice and chicken. I had Chipotle chicken and rice and 10 grams of butter. And no other point in my life would I have been willing to try that. But because I trust the system and I trust that those macros were pre-calculated out for me that I could do this, I went for it. I hit my goals that week in terms of where I wanted my weight to be. And then the week before that, kind of also on this system, following the system, trusting it that I had these macros, I had a bowl of whole fat, 5% whole fat yogurt with blueberries and mango on it. And then some hemp seed on top of that for like a nighttime, I guess you could say like final meal of the day. And no point in my life would I have been willing to have a whole fat and then also fruit and yogurt right before bedtime because of what I thought I knew about stuff. But again, just trusting that there's a system in place, that it's been calculated. I hit my goals for, weight control that week. I don't really say that to be all conclusive or that you need to do that or to follow that exact rule, but none of these foods are evil, and everything done in balance can be a part of a very comprehensive and fulfilling, I would say diet, but I almost hate that word, lifestyle.
Yeah, diet is clearly not the word. And yeah, lifestyle is it. It's making these small changes that are going to add up to a healthy lifestyle where you don't have to think about this. People who are on like a quote unquote diet, if you're going through life depriving yourself constantly and having to win that battle every hour, every day, whatever it may be, I don't think that's a recipe for long-term success. For me, it's making these small changes that will add up to a better lifestyle over years and potentially decades. So for me, it is all about, like you said at the outset of that, Jonathan, simplicity. I know we had this kind of joking straw man in the episode of me, this character Brad, being this ultra optimizer.
Have you found a metabolomics facility yet, Brad?
No, definitely don't plan on it. But that's the funny thing is, if you guys saw me in my real life, you would know I am not an ultra optimizer. I'm someone who just craves simplicity. So like when you're talking about hitting your exact number of grams for carbs and fat and protein, my brain shuts off, honestly, Jonathan. But that's the cool thing about you and I. We truly are so different, but we have the same goals, right? Like we're trying to just make better lives, and we know ourselves. When the audience hears, oh, Brad would never do that, but Jonathan lives and breathes by it because that works for you, like they can see that there are multiple perspectives, and presumably there are many other options. You have to figure out what works for your life. It's not a one size fits all. None of this is. Nothing about success in life is one size fits all, in my opinion. It's find what works for you, find what works for your own brain. It's how do you get your brain to adopt these habits and behaviors over the long term. For me, it's not being strict about anything. It's not depriving myself. That never comes into play for me. It's just creating a framework for life. It almost goes back to like the Jocko Willink thing. Discipline equals freedom, right? It's creating this framework that just makes everything else easier. So the framework for me is just around, what am I drinking? I'm mostly drinking water. What am I eating? I'm trying to cut down on carbs, sugar, and processed foods as much as I can. Does that mean that I don't eat them? No, of course not. I'm a normal person. That's my direction. Directionally accurate is kind of like how I'm looking at this. I'm trying to do this as I intend in a directional way. But like, am I mad at myself if I have a couple slices of Little Caesars pizza? Like if we're getting it in the house as like a treat? No, of course I'm not mad at myself. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. And I'm not beating myself up for going off the diet. I'm enjoying my life. Make these small changes, set up a framework that works, and don't beat yourself up when something not even goes awry, like when you just make a different choice. That's what life's about. And I think that leads, for me personally, to a happier and more successful life.
And Brad, let's just take just a half second to talk about supplements here. In a nutshell, I'm sorry, guys, there is no magic cure. There is not one pill that is going to make you healthy and replace weeks, months, or a lifetime of horrible nutrition in your life. It's just not going to happen. Your CoQ10 supplement that you're spending hundreds of dollars a month on, it's not going to replace a good diet. The million variations of that you're paying through the roof for. Do you know that you actually have a deficiency in this that you've been tested for, and that's what you're replacing? I doubt it, right? Because as we pointed out, those labs are far and few in between. And it's not like just taking these things will just only have positive benefits in your life. You can actually over antioxidize yourself and end up in a toxic place. So the larger theme is keep it simple. There isn't a magic cure. What there is personal responsibility. And maybe now, for the first time, you have bandwidth, you have space in your life, you've got your finances on autopilot, and you're saying, all right, how can I actually improve my day-to-day and take myself to a better place? Let's focus on simplifying and cleaning up the daily choices that you make to allow yourself to live the healthiest version of yourself into the next decade. All right, guys. Well, I'm super excited to dive into this next segment. If you remember, probably about a month ago, we did this episode really focusing on how to get out of debt, and specifically identifying the nuances of different situations and whether or not you should apply the debt snowball or the debt avalanche. It's a great episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, you definitely should go check it out. It is episode 115R. I think it will walk you through in a very actionable way, a stepwise process for tackling your debt. But we realized even as we were doing that one, we didn't really talk about debt consolidation, and two, we didn't really go into depth on the different types of debt that people actually have and are dealing with. And so we thought we could bring on an expert to help us work through that and provide some actionable information for our audience. And to do this, we're bringing on Gina Pogel today, who's a spokesperson for Am1, a personal finance site. Really excited about this conversation. Gina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And so, Gina, I think probably the place to start, as I was kind of referencing, is different types of debt. So, we at the macro level just talk about, okay, well, there's car debt, there's student loan debt, there's your mortgage, but that probably isn't as accurate as we could be. Can you help us take a few minutes and just break down the different types of debt that maybe people have?
Well, debt can be divided into two categories. There's secured debt, which means that the borrower pledges something that the lender can take back if the borrower doesn't pay the loan. So your car is the collateral for an auto loan. Your home is the collateral for a mortgage. Unsecured debt works differently. There's nothing for them to take back. In fact, the main security for a lender is your good word, your signature, or your promise to repay. And so for that reason, a lot of these loans are called personal loans or unsecured loans or signature loans.
Does that apply to credit cards too?
Credit cards are also unsecured accounts. The issuer can't come in and repossess the vacation that you charged. So yeah, they're also unsecured. Even student loans are technically unsecured because the lender can't tear the knowledge out of your head if you don't pay.
So Gina, unsecured, I'm assuming this is significantly riskier for the lender. So are those higher interest rates? Are they tougher to get? Or talk me through that.
Yes and yes. Because it's your good word and your past performance on debt that pretty much predicts how you're going to treat the next one, your credit score is much more important for personal loans, unsecured debt, than it is for a secured loan. For example, somebody with a 660 credit score might get a mortgage rate of 5%. Somebody with a 760 credit score might get 4.5%. There's a difference of only 0.5% because it's secured by a home. Where on a credit card, someone with a 660 credit score might get 23% and a 760 credit score might get 10%. That's a huge difference. So your credit score influences a lot more what you're going to pay. And with an unsecured loan, yes, it's absolutely harder to get because, again, the lender doesn't have security. However, you can't just walk away from unsecured debt just because there's no collateral. Your lender can call you many, many times requesting payment. It can write off your debt and turn it over to a collection agency. And most people know how that goes. Phone calls, phone calls, phone calls. They can sell the right to collect the debt to somebody else, more phone calls. Your lender can trash your credit score. It can sue you and get a judgment and garnish your paychecks or put a lien on your house. In extreme cases, a lender can actually force you into bankruptcy.
I actually wanted to talk about bankruptcy for a second, because even in the
Sure.
unsecured debt side, you kind of wrap student loans in there. And I know that while I can visualize many people going into bankruptcy and writing off different forms of credit card debt and maybe even their mortgage, I never hear about student loans in bankruptcy, or at least very rarely. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. If it's a private student loan, it's just an unsecured loan. But if it's backed up by the government, it can't be discharged, even in a bankruptcy. That's been in the news actually quite a bit, where people have taken huge government-backed student loans and then they get out of college, or worse, they drop out of college and they're saddled with debt that'll haunt them forever. Now, if you paid off your student loan with a personal loan, you've converted it into a truly unsecured account, and then it could be discharged in a bankruptcy.
So Gina, we're talking really high level how to categorize this debt, right? So we have secured and unsecured, but are there other ways that people categorize the different types of debt?
Well, there's an important way that the credit bureaus categorize your debt, and it really impacts your credit score. So it's important to understand, and that would be the terms revolving debt and installment debt. Revolving accounts are credit cards and lines of credit, and you can use them up to your predetermined limit, and you'll make a minimum payment at least. You never have to pay them off as long as the accounts remain open. And that can actually trip people up, because if you make a minimum payment on a credit card, you've probably seen articles that say it'll take 20 years to pay it off. And that's kind of true. Your interest rate varies on these, and your payment is determined by the amount you owe and whatever rate it is you're paying. On the other hand, installment debt has a preset term. So if you take a 5-year loan, you have 5 years to pay it off. End of story.
I actually want to slow down on this for a second, because I
Okay,
genuinely think that there are people that make minimum payments on credit cards thinking that they're making progress. And what you're saying is that you're treading water.
Absolutely. But that's a little misleading too, because when they say these articles, If you have a credit card account, your minimum payment will go down as your balance goes down. So if you took the minimum payment from your first high balance and just use that, you would pay it off sooner. But the thing that people do need to realize, though, is if they mindlessly make the minimum payment every time, it'll be decades before they pay it off, and the interest charges will be many times the amount that they originally borrowed.
So we've talked about the different types of debt. What are your thoughts on debt repayment strategies?
Well, once you've decided to become debt-free, you've got several options. First, you'll want to list all of your accounts and the amount owed, the minimum monthly payment, and your interest rate. And then from there, you can take a look and decide which method of debt control works best for you. If you're one of those people who's motivated by instant results, the snowball method is probably your best bet. It's kind of like going on a crash diet to drop a few pounds.
It's like the crash diet of debt repayment.
Well, yeah, because you can't do the crash diet forever, but the loss of weight right at the beginning can motivate you to change to a sustainable and healthier style of eating, just like the snowball method, in which you look at the smallest balance that you have and make minimum payments on everything else and devote all your resources to getting that debt paid off as fast as you can. That's like your crash diet. That makes you feel good. You've eliminated one of your debts and you've gotten in the right direction. And that can help you achieve a sustainable, intelligent way of debt management. And then, moving on to the next highest balance and the next highest balance. That works for people who really need that injection to get off and feel good about it and go forward in a positive direction. Now, on the other hand, the avalanche method is better for minimizing the interest that you pay. And the avalanche method is, instead of going after the account with the smallest balance first, you go after the one with the highest interest rate first. And you throw all your resources at that and attack it. And then when you get that one paid off, you go for the next one, and so on and so on.
And thank you for kind of highlighting those. And for our audience, if you want to take that and look at how the math actually affects you, your specific situation, again, we did reference this in depth and go through it in episode 115R. Gina, my question to you, though, is while both of those strategies are effective and they work if you follow through on them, neither of those account for debt consolidation. And honestly, that's what we wanted to talk about with you today. How, with the crash diet and this other method that you just mentioned, where does debt consolidation fit into this picture?
Well, debt consolidation is a fantastic tool for the right person. It can really accelerate your debt repayments. It can increase your credit score almost immediately. It gives you a finite end to your repayment. As we talked about, the credit cards, if you make your minimum payments, you can go on for decades, where a debt consolidation loan gives you a finite end to it. You're just replacing all your open-ended debt with a single loan, one payment, which makes budgeting much easier. And you have a finite end to your debt. So you take a 5-year debt consolidation loan, you pay it off, and in 5 years, your debts are gone.
Well, and ideally, this loan would have a lower interest rate than what you're currently paying on all these other debts, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's almost always the case. A personal loan, a debt consolidation loan, is almost always has a lower rate than a credit card. And it's almost always a fixed rate, which is really important because your payments aren't jumping around all over the place. You make one payment. It's always the same. It really helps with budgeting. It really helps keep people on track. And as they watch the balance go down, again, they can start to feel really good.
Gina, I have a bunch of questions, but I'll start with this one. What are the repayment terms or the length of the term generally on one of these debt consolidation loans? Is it something standard? Are there 5, 10, 20 years? Talk us through different options or what may be standard.
Well, it depends on what your characteristics are as a borrower. For instance, if you have home equity, many people use home equity for debt consolidation. And in that case, your term can be up to 30 years. Now, that gets you a nice low payment and a really low interest rate because it's a secured loan, but it has some really strong drawbacks. Probably the biggest one is that it's secured by your house. So if you can't make that payment, you're putting your home in jeopardy. The second thing is, while the interest rate is quite low, your payment is stretched out over such a long period that you actually end up paying a lot more in interest. And I ran some numbers on that. If you have a $5,000 in credit card debt to pay off and you do it with a home equity loan at 6%, and over 30 years, your payment's about $30 a month. Yay. But in the end, you're paying over $5,800 in interest. Where if you do that with a 5-year personal loan, even at 10%, which is 4% higher, you're only going to pay about $1,300 in interest, and your debt is gone in 5 years. So that's something people don't take into account. Now, if you do it with a personal loan, your interest rate is going to be significantly lower than your credit cards, and you have a relatively short endpoint. Personal loans, typically the term is between 1 and 5 years. So the important thing with that is you want to make sure you can afford that payment, but you're backstopped by the fact that it's unsecured. So it can be discharged in bankruptcy. Nobody's going to come and take your house.
So, Gina, who is a good candidate for this? I guess really I'm curious about their previous types of debt. If you had, let's just say for argument's sake, one credit card, are you a candidate for debt consolidation, even though it's just one? You're not consolidating anything, you're just kind of moving it. Or do you need multiple types of loans? I assume if you have a bunch of 4% interest loans, you're not going to consolidate them into something that might be a higher interest. Talk me through who's a good candidate.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're not a good candidate if your loans are secured, because lenders aren't interested in working with you. They can take your stuff back if you don't pay. You're not a good candidate if you have rock bottom interest rates on all of your debt. However, if you just have one credit card, if it's at 33% or something, and they go up to 40%, the odds are that a personal loan will have a lower interest rate, and it's fixed, which is a big deal. And also it has a finite term. So it will force you to pay that thing off in 5 years, where if you just make the minimum payment, you could be paying that sucker for decades. So even somebody with one loan can benefit from debt consolidation. However, one of the benefits that people prefer the most in debt consolidation is the ability to take a whole bunch of payments and convert it to one. And in fact, there's research out there that shows that the interest rate doesn't even really have to be lower for them to want that. So, if you have a hard time keeping track of your payments, if you don't like sending that check out to 15 creditors every month, you would still benefit from debt consolidation, even if your interest rates weren't lower, but the odds are that it will be.
What comes to my mind is and Brad was referencing this just a little bit, but who is this not going to work for? Like, for instance, if someone has a credit score that, has been nuked, right? I mean, it's in the 200s, 300s, it just doesn't exist. This isn't going to work for them. What is the bottom threshold of your credit score before you're really going to be able to even have these conversations with the debt consolidation company?
Well, there are debt consolidation loans for people with bad credit. Yeah, the interest rates are going to be higher, and the underwriting criteria are going to be stronger in that your income has to be really solid, and in order for you to get approved for these loans. And you can't say that debt consolidation doesn't work for somebody with a credit score of, say, under 600, because while the rate will be higher, it'll still be lower than their credit cards. When you have a really nuked credit score, your credit card rates are off the charts. So if you can get approved for a personal loan, a debt consolidation loan, the odds are it'll still be a better deal than what you've already got. However, if it's not, then you're not a candidate. If you have better credit card rates than your credit score would normally allow, then yeah, debt consolidation might not work for you.
So, Gina, is your credit score really the driving factor behind what the interest rate you get on this debt consolidation, or are there other factors? I'm thinking off the wall, the interest rate of your prior loans, I assume, has absolutely nothing to do with it. But are there any other factors other than your ability to repay and your credit score?
Well, your ability to repay is going to determine whether you get the loan or not. It's not going to really determine the interest rate. Your interest rate is almost entirely driven by your credit score, and that's because that is directly tied into the risk that the lender is going to be taking. So if you look at a rate sheet from a debt consolidation lender, they will split people up into as many as 30 different grades, and each one has a different interest rate, and they can range from say 6 or 7% all the way up to 40. And that's for reputable, good companies. Now, there are personal loans or debt consolidation loans out there where they'll say, oh, no credit check or bad credit. And you look at them and they're not really unsecured loans, or they're not really personal loans. You'll turn around and find that they're auto title loans and payday loans with very short terms, 2 weeks. And your interest rate on those can be as high as 3,600%. I've seen those online, and people are taking them, but it's not a good idea.
All right, Gina. So I'm curious about drawbacks or fees that people pay? Are there fees when you do this debt consolidation, or is it just is really what the company's getting, the interest expense? Or talk me through really most pertinent, the any fees or any other like drawbacks that jump to mind.
Well, it depends on the loan that you choose for debt consolidation. If you go with a home equity loan, there are fees and they can be, considerable, but you're offsetting that with a much lower interest rate. For personal loans, your fees can be range from nothing, and in that case, they're making it entirely in the interest, or you can pay somewhere between 1 and 5% upfront, 1 to 5% of the loan amount upfront for your personal loan. And, so the fees will depend on how much you're paying off. That's why it's important to compare personal loan offers between various providers. It's a good idea to get several quotes and then just go with the one that's right for you.
So now, like, there has to be some mathematical point where it makes sense to do this. If you are paying a 5% upfront fee, but your interest rate is only going down like 1% or something, like it may or may not be worth it depending on the term. But have you, and this is just off the top of my head, Gina, so this might be kind of an imprecise question, but have you gone through that analysis for like, does it make sense in almost all cases? Or like, if you have credit cards, well, then obviously it makes sense. But if you don't, if you have this other type of debt, it doesn't. Can you talk me through that?
Well, if you have secured debt, as I mentioned, it doesn't make sense at all. And if your credit card debt could be wiped out with the snowball method or the avalanche method at a lower cost than it would to consolidate it with a personal loan, then absolutely you're not a good candidate for it, and it would be a waste of money.
And student loan refinancing, do people use debt consolidation for student loan refinancing as well?
Well, it can be a really good option, mostly if you're worried about, how you're going to repay that student loan after you graduate. Converting your debt that could haunt you forever, paying that off with debt that doesn't necessarily haunt you forever can put you in a better financial position.
So let's say someone's listening to this, they feel like they met the criteria and didn't slip into the people that shouldn't do this. Like, all right, we're going to move ahead. What are some additional tips or things that they should be considering as they go down this debt consolidation path?
When you're looking at debt consolidation, get yourself a budget first and know how much you can realistically put towards consolidating your debt. Because one of the biggest reasons for failure is that people come out with an unsupportable payment. They can't sustain it over the term of the loan, and so they fail debt consolidation. And the second reason that a debt consolidation plan can fail is that people don't stop spending. So if you have a spending problem, you probably should go to a credit counselor and get a handle on that before attempting debt consolidation, because otherwise what will happen is you have a debt consolidation loan, you've wiped out all your credit card balances, and then you've got these brand new, shiny, zero balances, and you can't keep your hands off them, and you go and run the cards back up. And then you have a debt consolidation loan to pay, plus all your credit card balances.
Look at all the space I have on my credit cards. This is awesome.
Yeah. Be very disciplined about your spending. It doesn't mean you can't spend, but some experts recommend that you actually put your credit cards on ice. You put them in the freezer in a big block of ice so that you can't go near them. And, just carry a debit card with you so that you're only spending money that's in the bank. Turn off that one-click option in Amazon. In fact, stay away from...
Do you have those buttons? You know, like the Amazon, I always see the icons for, hey, have this button there, and you can just press it to order it. Brad, do you have any of those? Because that would be like the funniest thing ever if you did.
The dash buttons? Yeah. No, I clearly do not have them.
We make it so easy. I don't even know how it works, man. I see them each time, and I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder if people do that.
It's tempting.
Gina, you mentioned in passing, I wanted to come back to this, that debt consolidation can actually improve your credit score. Now, I'm sure that makes sense, but honestly, that's not obvious at face value. How does debt consolidation actually improve your credit score?
The right kind of debt consolidation can quickly improve your credit score, and that's because of something called a utilization ratio. When credit bureaus are looking at your finances, they look at how much credit you have, the limits on all your cards and lines of credit, and then they look at how much of that you're actually using. And that's called a utilization ratio. So if you have $5,000 of credit card balances and your credit limits total $10,000, your utilization ratio is 50%. And that's a little on the high side. That actually translates to 30% of your FICO score. So if you're using $9,000 of your $10,000 credit, that's a 90% utilization ratio, and that's very high. Now, supposing you take that $5,000 and pay it off with a debt consolidation loan. The debt consolidation loan is installment debt. Credit bureaus look at installment debt very differently. So then you have $5,000 in installment debt and zero in your credit card balances. Your utilization has gone from 50% to zero. And that is huge. That can really very quickly raise your score.
Gina, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Wow, Brad, what a great conversation. And honestly, this is a bigger question, right? I mean, what type of debt do you have and how do you navigate between the avalanche, the snowball, or, kind of take option C, consolidation. And I personally use consolidation with my own student loans, which I'll have to talk about in a separate conversation. Don't think we have time for that today, but it's an incredibly valuable tool because not everybody is starting from zero. Sometimes you have to clean up financial baggage, and this is potentially a very viable way to do that. And just to our audience, we have actually taken all the information that was in this episode regarding the different types of debt and the different strategies for repayment, and we've put that together into one consolidated resource for you. So if you want more information on what your next action step should be, just go to choosefi.com/debt and see whether or not this is going to be a viable option for you. It won't be a viable option for everybody, but I suspect for somebody in our audience listening today, this is something that you should look into further for multiple reasons. Simplicity, actually improving your credit score and getting you on the path to debt free so that your financial freedom clock can actually begin. To take action on this idea today, or really just to get more information, do a little bit more research, go to choosefi.com/debt. So Brad, let me bring this back to you. And really, I want your thoughts on this because the community is getting a lot bigger, and as that happens, I think back to the early days of this show, as the community grows, it implicitly means that more people are in different stages of their journey. And I think one of our responsibilities, one of our goals is to provide information that helps you where you are at so we can get you to this maybe ultimate goal of reaching financial independence.
Yeah, Jonathan, I completely hear you. I mean, this is certainly not a community of people who are multimillionaires. That's not financial independence. It's starting to make your life better and taking action. And to your point, people are starting here on day one with potentially huge debt. And they just want to get back to, as you call it, get back to broke. I think we need to provide resources and we need to make it okay as part of this community that this is not about what you did in the past. It's not about being optimized every day of your life. It's just taking action going forward to make a better life. So what's interesting, Jonathan, I don't know if you caught this, but definitely in at least two of our local groups this week, there were posts that were similar to this. And I'm going to read one of them here. I feel so intimidated. I'm new to the FI world and feel so far behind. I'm not sure I know what I'm getting into yet. And the other post was almost identical to that. Is this the place for me? I feel like everybody else knows so much and I don't, and I feel lost. My advice is, A, this is for everyone. It really, truly is. To me, and Jonathan, I know you feel the same, like this is a very, very big tent. This is not just for millionaires who have already made it and they're pulling up the ladder behind them. Like this is a community of people who genuinely loves the way they're living and feels that these little tweaks in life, that they make all the difference for having a better life for the next 5 to 7 decades that they're on this planet. That is just such an empowering message, I believe, and just a way of going through life. I really hope there aren't that many people out there who are truly intimidated. Like, to me, there's nothing to be intimidated about. We've all made mistakes. We've all started from a point where, like, we're not especially happy with this. But you know what we did? You know what the unifying theory is? It's taking action. You can bring all this information in. You can listen to podcasts, you can read blogs, you can do everything. But if you just sit on the couch and don't change anything, your life isn't going to be better. Those are the only people that would disappoint me, is if you knew this was out there and you still took no action, right? To me, it's get up off the couch and make your life better tomorrow and every tomorrow thereafter.
Yeah, Brad, the key there, taking action, is what I hope that people will come away with, whatever that means. If it means take action on your diet this week, if it means take action on your debt this week, follow up on one of these threads and just take one step that'll move yourself to a better place. Okay, well, let's go ahead and find out what's going on with the community. To help us with this, we have our good buddy Zach here today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah. What do you got for us today?
All right. Speaking of taking action, we have a frugal win of the week from Michelle. She just learned that her health insurance has an app. And when you go to the gym and work out for at least a half hour, it counts it as an activity. And if you do 45 activities a year, they send you $200.
Dude, talk about incentive alignment, man. That is fantastic. Congratulations, Michelle. Please share with us your frugal one of the weeks, whether it be by picture or message, put it in our Facebook group or tag us on Instagram, hashtag FWOTW.
All right. And Jonathan, we had a couple cool events happening in the local groups, both in South Florida and Connecticut.
Yeah, the groups have some really cool stuff going on. The first thing I want to mention, South Florida this past week actually had a beach dog party. Actually, what it was is a family event. You could bring your pets with you down to the beach for a fantastic hangout. And then on May 18th, Connecticut is hosting a side hustle series where they're going to start working through building your own side hustle and just kind of building a framework for that. Really cool event. The other thing I wanted to mention is that premieres and screenings are rolling out all across the country and frankly all around the world for the documentary Playing with Fire. On June 1st, the San Diego premiere is kicking off. I believe all the tickets for that are sold out, but just a couple days later on June 4th, there is going to be a screening in San Francisco for the documentary as well. There's a few others across the country. And then after that, Brad, they're going to be opening up and our local groups are actually setting up screenings all in their individual cities.
Yeah, this is really exciting. So yeah, Scott and his team, I think they have 7 of these screenings that they're organizing. And then hopefully there are going to be hundreds of other ones that are organized by our Choosify local group. So definitely head to your local Facebook group or go to choosify.com/local if you want to join a local group. If nobody has stepped up to organize it, then go to, what is it, Jonathan? Choosify.com/tug, TUGG.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Choosify.com/TUGG. You have to hit a threshold of 70 tickets for the screening to actually happen. So please make sure before you actually set up a new screening, you first checked with your local group to make sure there isn't already one in place. But if not, you can initiate it yourself at choosify.com/TUGG. And then there's one other cool thing that's going on that I just wanted to mention. We actually joined our DC local group to go to a junior achievement finance park where, Brad, we got the opportunity to work with our local group and basically teach financial literacy to 8th graders from that area. And I think we brought in, it was like over 100 kids were bussed in and spent the whole day learning how to set up a budget and, you know, how much life actually costs, trying to hit a savings rate. I mean, it was incredible. But Ed, who works with us here at Choosify, has actually been looking to see if there's a way that we could roll that out to other cities that are interested. And I think he has some updates for us on that.
Yeah, this was really cool. Ed has been in talks with the National Junior Achievement Organization. And I guess they said they've never seen such an engaged group from an organization as from Choosify when we had that day in DC. So, I mean, just a really, really cool thing. And they want to pilot this program. Ultimately, they're looking for 6 cities for this kind of beta partnership with Choosify and Junior Achievement. So 12 cities have been identified, and I'm gonna list them off here. Hopefully we can get some conversation going in those particular Choosify local groups and determine, do we have people that can volunteer at Junior Achievement on an ongoing basis? Because I think this can be a really mutually beneficial partnership, but most importantly, an educational opportunity for kids to be exposed to financial independence concepts at a really young age. So yeah, the 12 cities that Junior Achievement has identified are Seattle, San Diego, Denver, Phoenix, Atlanta, Detroit, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, St. Louis, DC, and Richmond. So let's see some conversation in those 12 local groups, and hopefully we can get at least 6 of them to step up and make this a reality.
All right, guys. Well, if you're interested in spending a little bit more time with us today, we're actually going to be joining Gene Chatsky for our first ever Twitter chat. And on this chat, the topic of conversation is protecting your retirement. Predictably, you can find us on Twitter at ChooseFI, and we will be live on that chat starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're listening to this after the 16th and you want to track down the replay, you can look at the questions and answers using the hashtag #ProtectYourRetirement, hashtag #ProtectYourRetirement. We look forward to seeing you guys there and hope you include us as part of your Friday afternoon. All right, my friends. Well, unfortunately, that is going to bring this episode to a close. Now, as you know, we like to finish every episode by doing a drawing for a copy of a book that we have found useful. And there's 3 books that we offer. The first is J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth. The second is Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future. And the third book, Freelance to Freedom by Vincent Puglisi. If you want to enter the drawing, all you need to do is just go to choosify.com/iTunes, follow the instructions there, leave us a short written review, and then send us an email to feedback@choosify.com, letting us know that you left a review and what screen name you left it under. We give away 1 book for every 5 written reviews that we get, and we announce the winner on the Friday Roundup. Brad, how many winners do we have today?
All right, Jonathan, we have 1 winner today, and the winner is Michael, and he called this an excellent introduction to FI. I'm a huge podcast nerd and have been since the format was invented. These 2 guys, plus their guest interviews, have put together a solid show that serves as an excellent introduction, not just to FI in general, but to all the components. The best part is the difference between the 2 hosts and how they've approached the concept. I'm totally new to this concept and community, and this show is the perfect introduction. I binged about 3/4 of the catalog in about a week. Thank you, Double Speed.
That's amazing. How is that even possible? We have like 200 plus episodes now. I'm so impressed. All right, man, we will be in touch. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.